I always appreciate any man that's willing to acknowledge and speak to patriarchy's existence instead of denying or just defending it. And I really want this Beyond Patriarchal Sex project to be a multicultural inquiry, exploring the influences of how it is so present across cultures all over the world. And something really interesting that came up inside this conversation with today's guest was when he was telling me about a Hindu text considered like a scripture that's not actually the most holy book, but has shaped culture, called the Manusmriti. And it's influenced mindset and behaviors of basically how to do patriarchal relationship. And I'm interested in collecting all the documents of these kind for the coming book. So if anyone has interest in that inquiry and you have anything to send me regarding religious or cultural textbooks that explicitly name the behaviors and mentality of patriarchal sex and relating, yeah, please pass it on. And it's something that people try to explain away between the difference of culture and religion, but it doesn't kind of matter at the end of the day. What matters is, are people following it? Are people practicing it? Are they not questioning it? And that's where an inquiry like this podcast comes in. Welcome to this provocative and heartfelt podcast, where patriarchy is defined as a paradigm that both men and women uphold in different ways. Here you get to listen in on genuine conversations between leaders from around the world to discover more mutual respect and less division, as well as more pleasure and love in your life. My name is Devashi Shakti, and you are warmly welcome to be part of these Beyond Patriarchal Sex conversations. Okay, so Prasanna, thank you so much for saying yes to being part of this conversation. And I was just sharing with you before we press record that the style of this podcast is different than normal. You know, sometimes people just get very random speakers onto their podcast, you know, it may not even be that connected to their subject sometimes. And it's yeah, very interview style. But with this, I like that you are interested in the co-created conversation that I like to have with people because there's a collective inquiry here that's being offered. But yeah, tell us about you. And if you could just name succinctly what it is that you're doing in the world, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, so I would look myself in two aspects, I would say. One is a more professional aspect where I'm working as a head of learning and development for a French multinational company. It's a software multinational company based out of Paris, and it's a global company. So I'm based out of India myself in Mumbai, but I work for that company. So that's my professional kind of a thing, which is connected with learning, which is connected with career development, leadership building, and topics around that. And what I do as my, you can say, passion project is to work on the topic of conditioning, like what I call my project as unlearning. So it is about looking at the systems, the beliefs, the overall conditioning through which we have all gone and trying to keep it in front of myself first as my me going through it myself and then to my audience so that they can look at it. And the magic, Devashi, with this topic is that once people see it, once people see the conditioning, the belief system which has been operating on them, they can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole inquiry, as you use the right word, starts. And that inquiry, I think it's a very interesting journey. So my intent, like you always, is to look towards the journey than just focusing on the destination. And this unlearning is the journey which I have chosen for myself.
Yes, yes, and I like that. It's like the sign of a true educator is that you understand that it's about unlearning.
Yeah,
And that's relevant when it comes to how people have sex and really anything, really, that we learn that is connected to our inner life, especially, right? And
absolutely.
yeah, I would love to ask you, because this is not maybe the normal podcast or the normal conversation to have. So I want to ask for you personally to share, how does it feel for you as a man to be entering into this inquiry?
Yeah, so connecting it to certain kind of spiritual aspects to begin with. If you see in, and I'm not kind of agnostic to any, but at the same time, I'm not attached with any. So I pick and choose the best from the best. And when it comes to this particular aspect of unlearning, before me going in through it, I have this one story, which is a very famous story, which everyone might have heard in some form or other, is that of a disciple who goes to a monk for learning. And when the person enters in the monastery, he goes and asks the uh, head of that monastery, or the guru, as we can say, that I want to learn something. So the master says, okay, no problem, let's first have a cup of tea and then we can start. And as most of you know, that the master keeps pouring the tea without stopping. The tea comes up to the brim of the cup, it starts overflowing, and the master doesn't stop. And this disciple is like, what's happening? Why are you not stopping, master? Can't you see the brim is full? The master says, exactly that my request to you is. So when you are approaching for any learning or any new education, it is important that you empty your cup. And I think that emptying cup is something which has stick with me. I definitely think that in various topics, we go with a filled cup. We are already full. We don't listen most of the times, I included, that we are not open for what's the conversation, and especially the connecting topic with you, sex, intimacy, relationships. Even there, we see that real problems start when we are not even listening to each other. And that's where the various assumptions, beliefs, and complications get started.
Yeah. And for you as a man to be comfortable with this conversation, and I mean this as a compliment, you as a man, right? Because there are, well, across cultures, actually, a ton of men that are very uncomfortable with this subject. So, what would you say that you have faced in your own life to be here having this inquiry with me?
So, to be very honest, I think I have been struggling with what most men have been struggling, maybe, in terms of understanding sexuality, understanding the topic of opening up about the whole thing. And fortunately for me, my father was very much open to have these conversations. When I came after my puberty in my teenage, he shared with me some of the very well scientifically read kind of literature around this topic of sex and intimacy. I think the name of the book itself was Master and Johnson's book on sex and intimacy. I think it was the one which was a very
Okay.
scientific research on that topic. Because other people who were my friends and who were in my vicinity, they were reading books getting from some old bookstore, which was a mix of pornography, which was a mix of uh, kind of unscientific approaches towards sex and all those things. So I think that distinction definitely helped me. So my father is no more. I lost him in 2015, but I would like to give that credit to him for being open with his son about these topics. Because again, in an Indian context, Devashi, I can tell you, it is not very easy for a father or a mother to open up with their kids about this topic. Even teachers, for that matter, they quickly close the topic on sex and reproduction within 15 minutes by doing some drawings and diagrams and then saying that, okay, now you will read on your own. And people don't read. They go and find things which are not scientific, which are not very correct, also, I think. And that leads to further complications in many people. So that's what
Yeah.
I see.
Yes, absolutely. And, since maybe when you were a child, the internet has gone crazy with all of the distortions of sexuality. So I think it's really hard for young people these days to be able to tune in to what is most conducive, what's mutually respectful, and what actually works, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have spoken to men on this podcast before who feel like they're not all the way there of living
Hmm.
the other side of patriarchal sex. And so I'm really open to wherever anyone is at. Um, but it sounds like you have been pretty tuned in from the start in regards to that. Also, I want to ask you here at the start. What do you imagine patriarchal sex even
So
means?
what is happening is whatever is being he or whatever he's getting on his plate, he's assuming, or whatever he's grabbing, to be very honest, on his
Yeah,
plate, he's assuming that that's it, but that's not it. And by that limitation, it's for both, as you rightly said, it's for both. And in fact, once a man is open to understand that it is beyond the physical, it is beyond the doing and getting into the being aspect of it, I think magic can happen there.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's this forgetting of the most powerful force that we all have to work with and just pretending it doesn't exist. That's another way of saying it. And it's very disrespectful to that intelligence that's innately in our bodies, and it knows that our bodies know that and I'll speak from the female experience, and that resentment and that emotion stacks up, and so then the blocks to heart level emotional intimacy is also more and more and more inhibited every time patriarchal sex is going on. But this inquiry is really embracing of, what does that look like in the culture? What does that look like in society? And that's where I noticed your work come into that, in terms of your passion, your project, because I hear you openly speaking about the effects of patriarchy and the ways that that gets internalized. And I think you comment on movies and some popular
Yeah.
culture themes. And but I also saw that you've written a white paper about helping people, as you say, unlearning, and that's really interesting too. So yeah, the different cultural experiences feels really important for me to highlight in this inquiry. And so that's another reason why I wanted to invite you, because you're living in India, you're surrounded by the modern Indian culture. And I'll just say this before I hand it back over to you that um, the God, the sort of religion of the dominant religions of the Western world have no female presence aside from a minor presence of a mother role. However,
Mm.
in say Hinduism, there are so many and they are so ferocious and powerful and, full power feminine. And yet, because I've always thought how much that absence of the full spectrum divine mother in religion is so part of what people internalize, like male centric, right? But in India, you do have so many prominent, incredible depictions of the primordial feminine. And yet, at large, speaking in the culture of uninitiated people, uneducated people around this subject, there's an enormous amount of abuse going on.
Yeah.
And I find
Yeah.
it intriguing. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's a brilliant observation which you have. In fact, if you see in the context of India, where I think it has been a degrade or a
Yeah.
degeneration for a culture like in Indian culture, you can say, where if you go to a place like Khajuraho or if you read books like Kama Sutra, they are way matured and way beyond what we are talking today in 2026, which
Mm,
means that it has been a decline in a way from where it was and where it could have been to what we have limited it to now. And there might be various reasons. I'm not a historian, I'm not an expert on the topic, but I'm sure there might be various reasons and interventions which have happened throughout the centuries, which have brought us to this limited scope of the topic. But at the same time, what it is today, if you see, even in a country like India, and because India is a vast country, as you know, we are into different time zones. So there are people in today's India who are of 2026 and talking about these topics very openly. But there is
Yes.
also an India of 18th century or maybe of 19th century, which is still stuck with the old ways of doing things, inside the name of or under the name of tradition. A lot of suppression of women happens even within households, and they can't express, they can't talk, they can't share their problems, pains, even pleasure for that matter. And you can imagine a life which has no self expression. It is like living for the sake of living, living for the man of the house, living for the society, living for the social norms and conditions which are there just for that. And they don't even realize till the end of their life, unfortunately, in some cases.
Yes, absolutely. And that sort of horizontal focus as opposed to the vertical one, if someone is spiritually inclined, is just so, the vertical channel is so collapsed in the culture. The conditioning is so heavily for her to pour her whole energy out, giving
Yeah,
and to everybody else. And a depleted woman, a depleted mother is the source in a lot of ways of continual destruction and suffering in how I see it after working with these energies for decades. And that's not women's fault. Women are,
mm,
you know, shaped in that way, conditioned in that way because of the patriarchal context to a large degree.
yeah.
So, yes, so you're saying women often don't realize maybe what else was possible or what was missing even until later in life from how you see it in women?
100%. So it is definitely the case. So, and the conditioning is so heavy and it is so ingrained that anything else looks like a blasphemy kind of a thing, that no, nothing like this can happen. I can't do this. This is beyond what is expected from me. So these kind of, under the name of adjustment, under the name of manage it, so that you are morally correct or whatever, there might be different caps which people might be using to hold it down, but it has been the case.
If you are a woman, I want you to know about the work I do when not speaking on this podcast, which is all about how to live from your embodied womanly presence for your health on all levels, as well as it being a feminine spiritual path in itself. And it has a way of effortlessly unlocking your unique gifts to be a voice for women in the way that you are called to do so. And this happens through a facilitated training called Women's Somatic Sovereignty Certification. It gives you the chance to restore your own female nervous system, which I specialize in, while gaining the skills to be an effective somatic professional supporting women to thrive. Come to one of my free workshops to know more about this. We have a fantastic community of women to learn and to grow with, which has been going strong since 2005. So see the links below this episode for more on certification training.
And again, as coming back to our starting point, it is unfortunate that even men don't realize the impact of it, both on them as well as on the women around them. So it's going in a vicious circle in a way, and it's unfortunately a downward spiral kind of.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that sort of degenerative momentum in the modern culture, it's worldwide in how I see it. It's not just India, it's not just the West, it's everywhere. And of course, there are certain communities and certain individuals that are not in that momentum, thank God.
Wow.
And who are holding incredible ancient wisdom, and so the people, the authors, the teachers that are so practiced in that and have been are holding and have been sharing and speaking everything everyone needs to know. It's already been happening for a long, long time now. But that's why I wanted to bring in this inquiry because it's like the ma the majority of people still don't understand why they would want that, why that would benefit them. So
Mm,
where the value of naming patriarchal sex comes in.
absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And I think what happens by that is once you are, sex becomes one of the, um, by the way, thing in the whole process. If you see, it is definitely impacting the other aspects of a personality. So whether it is in terms of their career, in terms of their whatever achievements they want to do, it definitely has some impact or the other. They can't be fully there wherever they are now. It can be in their own creation in a creative world. It is very difficult when you are suppressed in one area, you can't be expressive in other. It somehow touches everywhere and it brings you down in all other aspects as well.
Yes, yes, yes. And because it's so primal, because it's so the original frequency that we come into the world with, you know, I believe it's re-imprinting us more deeply, embedding patriarchy more and more when it's happening unconsciously. But at the same time, because it's so primary, it's so the origins of life itself, sex and intimacy, that if we can bring consciousness to it, then the most extraordinary things are possible, and I'm sure you've had amazing experiences like I have, and so many of the women that learn from me and the men actually. I mentioned how with the men it's more of an unlearning process, but in that we just need to get out of the way really for that primordial intelligence to arise and learn how to be in relationship with that. And I think why I focus so much on sex and intimacy in the work that I do off this podcast is because it is that microcosm of
Mm.
we believe we really are on the inside. So when it gets to that non-cognitive level of body relating to another body, then what we really think, how we really feel, what we really believe tends to come out. And so if that can be transformed, I've seen how that unlocks every other area of life to find more alignment and more connection by working kind of with the source point, so to speak.
Absolutely. So that's exactly my point was. So as you say that it is the microcosm of various things. I can imagine right from the age of being like a student, as I said, when a person reaches their puberty and when they are into their early adulthood, I think from there itself it starts impacting them. It impacts their studies, whether people will understand the impact or not, but it definitely impacts their studies. It impacts their career choices. It impacts their interactions in their very first job. So it has all these minor, one can say, to look at it, it might look like a minor disturbance, but then it goes on to have a completely different trajectory for the person. And
That's
unfortunately, it's in a wrong direction then.
That's totally right. Yes. And so, what would you say is one of the main messages that you share on your channel? I think you have a YouTube channel and an Instagram profile. So, what would you say is the main message that you're transmitting on there with the videos and things that you post about movies and your commentary on them?
Yeah. So I use movies as a kind of anchor, you can say, to start with, because it helps me to build stories around it or to build the concepts around it and bring in the data, which is already there. Researchers have done a lot of work on this topic. So it helps me to bring it all together and people find it interesting when it is connected with a movie. It's at least a starting point. Of course, if you look in the comments of my Instagram, you will find that there are very serious comments. People in my DMs keep flooding me with various things which they have going through, and most of the time I see that the women have not been even listened to, not been validated for what they are going to. Forget about resolution, solving the problem is the next level thing, but even anybody listening to them has been a problem. And so I think what I do to answer your question is to bring these topics on the forefront. And in my case, I think when a man is speaking about these topics, there is a risk and there is also a positive side to it. The risk is that I may sound that, okay, you are a man, how do you know our problems in the first place? How can you talk about us? That can be one way of looking at it. Unfortunately for me, nobody has been in that mindset or a mind frame who has challenged me in that way. But the other side of it is when a man speaks, they also understand that, okay, so this means that it is not only that we are feeling it ourselves and we are imagining it, but it is reality. When the other person when sees it and talks it and keeps it in front for others to see, then that feeling of being seen, I think, is equally important. And I strongly feel that in my audience. I get it very visually in my comments and other aspects where they say that we felt seen.
Yes, and I very much doubt you would get criticism from women because I think if I can speak for women for a moment, I think we're so grateful whenever men can name patriarchy without flinching and can
Uh,
actually enter into discussions about it that are helpful and useful and yes, saying things that need to be said, saying things that women need to be hearing men saying as well.
True. True.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that has been my work till now, and I am exploring this topic to a larger extent to see what else can be done so that because one other risk which I see with this is it is all about talking what is the problem, and everyone may say, okay, we know the problem. Now, what next? I think that what next will come through the conversation. I am a believer of having the conversation alive, keeping things alive, as you are doing with this topic of patriarchy and sex as a topic to discuss, keep talking. I think that's where the ideas for solution also will come. We hiding those topics under the carpet is not going to help anyone, anyways.
Yes, exactly. I mean, where does the cycle of abuse get to end? And of course there are extreme cases of abuse, and anyone like me who sees like news articles, videos coming out of Indian media, there are really brutal, really horrific things going on for women pretty regularly, unfortunately. But I like to let people know with this inquiry that it's not just about those really extreme incidents, it's about the everyday experience with regular people who are within the patriarchal sex paradigm, but they don't even know that they are. That's probably the main message. I mean, because it's the brutal extreme things are obvious that this is terrible and destructive and in no one's favor. But the everyday experiences that are normalized,
Mm,
and people are maybe afraid to approach and look at and to question. That's why I'm inviting so many other people to bring their voices and their experiences into this conversation. Um, so it's not just me saying, well, this is what I've found from all of my clients. It's so important that, all different cultural backgrounds, all different ages, and different professions as well are able to acknowledge that this is an underlying mentality, that's affecting how men and women relate to each other or not truly relate is the key, isn't
yeah.
it?
Absolutely. And Devashi, when you're talking about different cultures, I am sure when we look at Indian culture per se, the one of the dimensions of culture, which is as per, I think if I'm not wrong, it's for the Hofstede culture dynamic dimensions, is power distance. So if you see the power distance in an Indian context is very high. So
Yes,
hierarchy has a lot of weightage here in Indian culture, and in hierarchy, a man becomes the top or the head of the house, and that makes a lot of decision making
yes.
choices are all centered around that man. So what gets prepared in a house when they're cooking is all based on what he likes. From there it all starts. So now you can imagine till what extent it can go. And then when it comes to even sex, intimacy, love, all these topics are around that man centered, and that's where it is. So, and anything which is not fitting in his system for whatever reason is considered as to be rejected, is not good for anyone, is immoral, and all those things. So that definition itself starts at a wrong place in a way because of the power distance it gets. more off so than any other cultures. I don't know, maybe it is different in different cultures. And power distance in India is a very prominent dimension.
And that's exactly one of the main things I wanted to get into with you today in this conversation, because Um, for some people in the West, patriarchy is reasonably invisible to them. And then others from the West, like myself, it's been in their face their entire life. They have never been able to escape it, of noticing that it exists, right? But in India, it's so much more forcefully embedded into the culture. And I would say that's just, I mean, there's so many more people, but such a higher rate of very brutal and extreme violent crimes, sexual crimes as well. Yes, and it's been really interesting to bring this collective inquiry forward, because I just really, from the start, intended to get into the specifics and more of the beyond. But what I've actually encountered in bringing this forward is the amount of people that deny that patriarchy is even there, and that's been amazing. And this is the process of intimacy itself, isn't it? We have what we have, we feel what we feel, and then someone else lets us know where they are at. And there's a
Yeah.
process of listening. And I'm holding a lot of space, deep listening here, because I've realized that, at least in the West, probably not in India, but feel free to correct me, there are so many men. I'm not in a Western country right now, but when I am and where I'm from, there are a huge amount of men who seem to think, oh, that's something from thousands and thousands of years ago. Why are you still going on about that?
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think, oh my gosh, the privilege speaking in saying it like that, right? And so I really wanted to get into it today with you, because you are from a culture and you're living in amongst a culture where it's very dominant. The influence is,
Very dominant. Yeah.
no one would pretend it's not there. Is that true?
No, it's so dominant, as you rightly said. It is like two fish talking to each other, and one asks about other, "Do you know water?" It is as kind of that, and the other
Yeah.
one says, "What are you talking about? I don't know what water is." It's that dominant to answer you. So, as you rightly said, it is same. Like, why are you even talking about it? Because it has become so normalized, uh, so kind of a day-to-day kind of a thing. So it's
Yes.
like oxygen. Why are you
Yeah.
questioning it? It's that way. And anyone who talks about it is being seen in a different way. But the funny part I will tell you, Devashi, and which is fortunate for people like us, you and me, is once you put some light on it, then it is impossible for them to forget it. Then they can't say that I don't know this or I can't see it. Once they see it, they can't unsee it. That's the magic. That's what I'm trying to say. That if this mouse was not there till it was not there, but once I show you, then you can't say that, oh, what is this? I don't know. You are talking age old things. What you are 1,000 year old person or what? Nothing of that happens. Then either they keep quiet or they obviously, like any change, they first deny it and start becoming angry about it. In some men, you might have seen, even I get comments about they use fancy words. I do some of the words I don't even know what they are calling me, but they keep calling me with some new age words. And the whole point is that you don't belong to us, you are not from our world, kind of thing, just to object or
Okay.
just to offend you and try to say that what you are talking is all useless and all. But I think that that pinch, that something which hurts them itself shows that they have started observing it. And that's the intent. I think for me, it is to show them at least and leave them with a choice that you can do something about it.
This is really interesting. So you're saying there are people in India who would try to deny that it exists, or are you saying that they're more so much saying this is life, this is relationship, this is what sex is, like deal with it. And if you've got something to say, you're the problem.
100%. You are the problem is the first point, because the point is this is how it should be. That's the place they come from.
Ah.
This is what it should be. Why are you trying to change it? Why are you trying to eat like this? Is what they feel. What we are trying to tell them is you are already eating like this. Please eat like this. That is our point. but they will have a different argument altogether. And that's the whole thing. That's why I gave you that example, that the other fish will be like, what are you talking about? What is water? They're so in depth of it.
Okay, and so where is this assumption coming from that this is patriarchy is how it should be? What's that belief system?
So there are several religious scriptures which might have been wrongly interpreted, or maybe there are, see, I can pick up any book and I can call it that this is what the best book on any religion is, and then I start following it without questioning it, without maybe reasoning it or whatever. So there are such various things which are at play here, and there are people who have been the beneficiaries of this model, as you know, obviously, and they
Yes.
want to continue. It's the basic economics, as we say, it's the incentives at play. So anyone who is talking about it is de-incentivizing them. Anyone who asks these questions is a problem for them, because it is taking away their benefits, that power. Again, it's the game of power at the end of the day. So a man can feel like a king at his home. See, I can tell you, Devashi, in India, there are examples where a person might be a driver, working as a driver of someone, and may
Yeah.
not be very well treated. The person may not even get to sit and have a cup of tea or a coffee. They may not get a loo break sometimes because it's a long drive. The owner may not allow him to get down or to stop the car. But the same man, when he goes home, he is the king. The lady of the house is supposed to serve him, who was not even getting a loo break 5 minutes ago. Now suddenly he becomes like a king, where she comes and maybe serves him food, do massage or whatever, and so gets whatever he wants in that house. So you can see that touching that topic of patriarchy, touching that topic of anything which empowers women is not beneficiary for men, is what their understanding is. Of course, you and I know the real magic of collaboration. We know the real magic of being together, co creation, but they are not in that zone yet. So it's a one sided way of thinking. And any scripture, any religious guru, any book which supports that, they just clinch to it. They say that this is the way it is. Don't change it. Don't touch it. Don't talk about it.
So in Hinduism, is that what you're commenting on? What are the books that kind of say this message or are being misinterpreted even by people?
Yes.
Please know that whether you are a man or a woman or a couple listening in to this podcast, you are welcome to get in touch about private mentoring, where I can personally support you to unlearn patriarchal sex, to establish yourselves together in the beyond, which is the most natural yet evolutionary way of exploring intimacy together, increasing the pleasure, the love, the fulfillment that you get to have as man and woman. Whether you're beginning this journey or whether you're already quite advanced, you're welcome to talk with me on a free connection call to see whether a confidential, private mentoring process is right for you. You can find the connection call links in the show notes.
So in Hinduism, if you see, there is a book by name Manusmriti. Manusmriti, if you can Google, you will find the Manusmriti book, which is kind of a base for many of the Hindu rituals and traditions and culture. And it talks specifically about how to treat women. And I can put it in the bracket, maybe ill treat women, to be very honest. If you
Hmm.
see the wordings which are used, it clearly talks about she should not be let out, she should be kept at home. She should not be allowed to go in front of other men. There are hundreds of such things. You can find all those things detailed, documented. Now, when you are following such a scripture, that itself is the stoppage. Then you are holding on to it because it is helping you today. The man is holding on to it because it works for him, but it definitely is not the right approach or right thing to do. Maybe it was written by someone at some time, and not everything written is to be taken as is. It is important to challenge it. It is important to find the reasoning behind it. You pick the good things if they are, no problem. But if they are not so good things, then it is better to drop them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is really, I can't believe I did not know about this book until today
Yeah,
because
maybe I can message you later also the link or anything
yeah.
about it. It should be available, and there are scriptures around it which specifically target women, if I can use that word.
Yes, thank you, because I am kind of looking at those specific things in the Quran, in the Bible. I'm aware of that in there, but
No,
I
this
may,
you should not miss then. This you should not miss. This
yes.
will give you a lot of clarity of how the whole thing has transformed and how it is again coming back now with a lot of focus on the topics again. And people find it interesting for them because it helps them, as I said.
And who wrote that book? I mean, I'm asking because people believe Muhammad wrote the Quran, people believe Jesus wrote the Bible, which we also know is not historically true exactly. So who wrote this one from Hinduism?
Yeah, it is the Manu. So the word Manu comes, the Manusmriti comes from Manu, who has been the writer of this, and people have been following him. So it is Manu, Manu, Manu. He is the one who wrote it. And what happens with that is Smriti means again in Indian context, at least I can tell you, there was a time when people used to remember things and then pass on to the next generation. Maybe it was before publishing became
Yes.
normal and books and all things came. Of course, there were some handwritten notes also in Tamra Lipi and other things which were being written. But before that, it was normally that a shloka or any mantra was I would continuously repeat it with my disciples so that they learn it, they pass on to the next generation, and that is the way it has been. But Manusmriti is something which has been written. That Smriti part has been brought together. So maybe Manu said again, you might have to check it again, just as a disclaimer I'm putting. But Manu, if I'm not wrong, is someone who said that all that auditory knowledge which was there, he brought it together in a written script, and that script is available, so you can read the script. It talks very clearly. And today a person, any intelligent, normal, educated, well-being person can understand how it is clearly targeting women.
Yes, yes. And from a very clearly male frame, male lens,
100%.
because what he thinks he remembers from all of the, verbal education, non-written language that got passed on is through his lens. And
Absolutely.
and so that makes me curious, is there misunderstanding? Is there misinterpretation? Or was that literally what people said for hundreds of or thousands of years?
Absolutely, as you rightly said, it is for anyone's guess. Then whatever the person might have interpreted it himself, he would have put it maybe based on his that current situation, current timing, whatever he felt right, he might have written. It's an opinion, honestly speaking. It can be an opinion kind of a thing. There has been no other way to look at it. But today, when you can see it, the first thing you should do is not to follow it, I think.
Absolutely. To not follow it, to question it, to look beyond it. Yes, yes, definitely. And I realize I have another question for you before we go into highlighting the great work that you're doing in the world around all of this, because you've already been exploring patriarchal sex and relating dynamics in your own way. So, capitalism and patriarchy, because I've noticed some pretty progressive like modern Western women starting to say that it's not patriarchy, it's capitalism. And this is so ridiculous to me because they are very interlocked. This is true. The
Hmm.
example you gave of the modern taxi driver, and also if whoever translated this key foundational book for Hinduism that you've told us about today, but they exist separately as well.
Yeah,
Like whatever economic system is oppressive to people at the time. Currently, it's capitalism for most people. Um, Patriarchy still goes on even when it's not financially orientated or directly as a result of that. So to me, they both they're very locked in together, but they're separate things at the same time. I would love to get your take on that so other people can hear, especially from someone who's knowledgeable about this subject and is in a culture where patriarchy is even more extreme than it is for maybe some of the listeners.
yeah. So in a way, I tend to agree with your part, where I think it is independent to a certain extent that irrespective of capitalism or in the absence of it is still there. So that is very clear. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Now, as we gave the example of a driver, or maybe what happens today, even into today's India, we have a lot of quick commerce, as we say, that in 10 minutes you get the grocery and all those things. You will see this is at play again. Even patriarchy is at play. So, if you want a maid in India, today is available on a mobile app in 10 minutes. Now, there is definitely how the selection process, the way they are being paid, the way it is, the kind of holidays they get. In fact, if you see, they are kind of incentivized for having a bad work-life balance in a way. So the
Mm.
more less number of holidays you take, you will be paid more. So something like that. So the whole point is it is intertwined. It is intertwined for sure. There is no clear cut distinction. But in the absence of capitalism, will patriarchy still exist? 100% yes.
Yes, yes. Yes, thank you. And I suppose I mean what I said, especially in relation to dynamics between men and women on an intimate level, because just as you said, patriarchy can still be there, even if issues around capitalism are not a driver for that. So take a man like on the top of the power pyramid, financially, more abundant than he could possibly
Yeah.
manage to spend in his lifetime type of thing. He can still be, right? Maybe a main perpetrator in the
Yeah.
patriarchal system. Like possibly this can happen. So it's not about the power imbalance just in the economic world, but maybe
True.
economics expands into this entire subject itself, because
Yeah.
what is economics?
True, true. Economics, if you see the way it has been related to, like a man's earning even today, irrespective of the amount and the quantum of money or he's making, it will be treated as the primary source of income. It will be treated as the thing which is protecting the household. It is nourishing the household. A woman's income is treated, at least I can talk about the Indian context, is treated as a secondary income. It is good to have. It's okay if you don't earn. It is just a additional income to spend on vacations and things like that. That's the relation with which it is being seen. In
Mm,
reality, it might be very different. There are women who are at serious business and doing serious jobs, but the way it is related, even by the family household, the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, there is like, okay, if you wish, you can stop going to work. So the first question or the first suggestion of stopping their work will always go to the lady, not to the
yeah,
man.
yes.
Yeah, and even if you see that the impact of capitalism in a way with maternity leave, with paternity leave, these are the topics if we try to touch upon, you will clearly see there has been reports where or studies which clearly proved that in India, when India introduced as an act, as a law, that women should get 6 months leave as a maternity leave, it resulted in further harming them.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you can. I can share a few links and reports with you, which clearly shows how it has further harmed them. Because the moment if I, as a manager, come to know that when while taking an interview that the lady is recently married and is planning a kid, I would rather not hire her, because if
Oh,
she is hired, she will go on a 6 month leave. So these kind of typical calculations people do, which are not good, but I'm just saying that that's the reality of the matter, and
yeah.
that results in further harming the cause of the lady.
Yes, okay. So work opportunities can be reduced or removed.
Is reduced. It is the studies show that it is reduced.
Definitely is. Yeah, I can imagine that would happen. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see all these avenues where we could just keep going down
Yeah.
several different tracks.
No,
Um,
maybe we can always have another conversation, maybe a few weeks or months later for sure. But I would definitely love to go into more details of various other. I'm sure by that time your book would also be in a good shape or maybe published,
I
and then
hope
let's
so.
see.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. And just I want to address one thing before we come towards a completion here, because if it's meant to all be left as it is and we're meant to just deal with it, like I don't believe that, but I'm just saying. Um, what then with the spiritual teachings about how to be in contact with the divine reality and actual harmony between men and women, the masculine and feminine within an individual as well, is that not the guiding point? Is that not what we're meant to actually be emulating, if anything? So
Yeah,
it's like a endless task to try and dismantle patriarchy, but the results of what happens when we don't are just too devastating to
it's
not be willing to
devastating.
look at this, right?
100%. It is going to be devastating. And again, again, we are touching back to where we started in a way, but the unfortunate thing is that men are not realizing the loss of the whole experience for themselves along with the women, but for themselves as well. And I think that that's a very important point. If we go by the basic economics, which we were talking about just now about incentive, if you are a selfish man, even then you should be looking for this because this is going to give you a better experience, a larger holistic experience, a more spiritual and soulful experience than what you are getting today by restricting and limiting to yourself first and to the women around.
Yes, yes, maybe this should be my marketing angle. I mean, why aim to just be a king at the top of the patriarchy castle? Why not aim to be godlike?
And men will be falling for this for sure.
Anna, thank you so much. And I want to direct everyone to how to connect with your work. And
Yeah.
let me just check because I know that you have a lot of commentary about patriarchy. You're passionate about this subject as well. You talk about that on your Instagram profile. Um,
Yes.
then your website leads people to a quiz that you've created, a really
Correct.
in-depth quiz that you've written a white paper on. And
Yes.
and that one is that one more about unlearning whatever someone needs to unlearn. So it's
Yeah,
not
it's more about understanding the conditioning. So what I call it as a conditioning score assessment. So it lets you know what is the level of assessment, and I have five dimensions on which that assessment is known. So I called it like a space framework. So SPACE, and you get to know where do you stand, whether it is the story, whether it is a pattern, whether it is agency which you are lacking, or it's the expression you are lacking. So those five dimensions are there. It helps you understand the leverage which you can get from any of these dimensions based on your assessment. So I would
yeah.
definitely urge to all your audience also to maybe go and do the assessment. That I'm sure will open up something for them. It's a free assessment, anyways. Yeah,
Yes, yes, a free assessment. And I'm sure you've got some really valuable info there on your website. So I'll put the links here for you. And
sure.
is your main aim in having people go through that to investigate and unpack their patriarchal conditioning? Is that your highest hope for that work?
100%. That's exactly my hope. And if, as I said, once they know where they have to work on or what is their key lever, I'm sure they are left with a choice to do something about it. And I think in today's world, even reaching that stage is a big achievement.
Yes, and it's such a logical process that you've created for people to follow. It's like you can't really argue with it. It's just very clear. So thank you
Thank you.
for being you and the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you for being open to this conversation. And
Thank
I
you,
would love
Devashi, for
to hear.
giving me the opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Prasanna.
Bye bye.
Thank you for sharing this episode if it's moved you, and know that saving or sharing it around, it genuinely helps to spread this message and also to attract more interesting speakers to join the Beyond Patriarchal Sex conversations. And there is much more to come, so keep tuning in to these weekly episodes so that we can all be part of shifting division into connection for ourselves and for the coming generations.